Chapter 1, The Last Ration. The mining station hung in the void like a wounded beast, its skeletal arms reaching out toward the dying red star it orbited. The light from the swollen sun bled through the station's fractured viewports, painting the corridors in rusted crimson. The air carried the tang of metal and old oil, thick with the scent of too many bodies packed into too little space. Somewhere deep in his bones, the fusion core rumbled like a restless giant. Evan Rourke sat cross-legged on a maintenance crate in the cargo bay, the last foil-wrapped ration balanced in his hands. The thin plastic crinkled under his fingers. He stared at it for a long time, the hollow ache in his gut war with the even deeper ache of knowing there wouldn't be another until payday, if payday came at all. The bay doors groaned open, and the sound of shuffling feet broke his thoughts. A shadow slipped through, small, hesitant. At first, he thought it was one of the station's feral scavenger children, but as the figure stepped into the light, the truth hit him. She wasn't human. The girl's chitinous skin caught the red glare, plates of iridescent violet shifting as she moved. Her thin limbs trembled, and her large, multifaceted eyes glistened like dark glass, reflecting every flicker of the bay's failing lights. She wore nothing but a threadbare thermal wrap, far too big for her narrow frame, and clutched it around herself as though it could ward off the station's perpetual chill. Evan knew enough about the Tviri to understand what he was seeing. An orphan, no clan, no protector. In their society, that was a death sentence. She froze when their eyes met, her mandibles twitching in a faint, instinctive display of fear. "Easy," Evan said softly, raising his palms in a slow, universal gesture. "I'm not going to hurt you." Her gaze flicked to the ration in his hands. She didn't move closer, but her throat clicked in a sound halfway between a swallow and a whimper. Evan's stomach twisted, not from hunger this time, but from the quiet desperation in that sound. He looked down at the ration one last time. It wasn't much. A few compressed protein blocks, a handful of dried fruit, a squeezed pack of water thickened with electrolytes. Barely enough for him. Certainly not enough for two. But she looked like a stiff breeze could snap her in half. With a sigh that felt like it came from somewhere older than his bones, he tore the packet open. The faint, synthetic smell of processed nutrients filled the air. He held out the contents in both hands, palms up, making sure she could see he had no weapon. She didn't move for several heartbeats. Then, with the kind of slow, deliberate care only the truly starving possess, she stepped forward. Her bare feet made almost no sound against the grated floor. When she reached him, she hesitated, glancing up into his face as if seeking permission one last time. Evan nodded. The girl took the ration and ate with mechanical precision, as if afraid to waste a crumb. Her mandibles worked silently, and now and then she glanced at him, quick, darting looks, as though trying to map the meaning of his expression. He didn't speak. Words felt clumsy here. When she finished, she held the empty packet in her small clawed hands. Then, unexpectedly, she pressed it back into his palm and touched her forehead briefly to his knuckles, a gesture he vaguely remembered from some half-forgotten cultural briefing. Respect. Debt. Her multifaceted eyes caught the bay light again, and for a heartbeat, Evan thought he saw something there beyond hunger, something sharp and bright, like a promise. Then she was gone, vanishing into the maze of the station's service corridors. Evan sat back on the crate, the empty foil packet crinkling in his fist. His stomach growled, but the sound seemed distant now, out beyond the docking bay. The mining station groaned under the weight of its own slow collapse. Somewhere deep inside, the girl's faint footfalls had already faded, swallowed by the hum of the engines and the restless murmur of the crowd. He told himself she wouldn't survive the week, that this was just one of 1,000 kindnesses lost to the void. But a part of him, small, stubborn, and undeniably human, hoped he was wrong. Chapter 2, Years in the Black. The years bled together in a way only deep space could manage. No sunrise, no sunset, just the endless hum of the ship's heart and the cold breath of the void pressing against the hull. Evan Rourke learned to measure time in jumps and cargo manifests, in the smell of recycled air and the taste of whatever station brew passed for coffee that cycle. His ship, the Gray Gull, was an old freight hauler, its paint long scoured away by micrometeorite grit. Its engines kept alive more by stubbornness than design. The corridors were narrow, lined with exposed wiring, and the faint smell of ozone from overworked life support regulators. Sometimes, when he lay in his bunk, he'd listen to the uneven thrum of the reactor and imagine it was a tire heartbeat. He didn't talk much about the mining station anymore. Not to the few drinking companions he kept, not to the temporary crewmates who came and went like dust motes in a sunbeam. But sometimes in the quiet between jump points, he'd remember the chitin-skinned girl and the way her eyes had reflected the light. He told himself she was gone. It was easier than thinking otherwise. The galaxy beyond was no kinder to a drifting human than it was to an orphaned Fury. Humans were still a rarity in this part of the spiral. Too soft, too slow to heal, too prone to improvisation instead of order. The alien traders on the rim saw them as curiosities at best, liabilities at worst. Evan carved out a living by leaning into that stereotype. He could haggle with a cross-scrap dealer until the alien's patience frayed to the breaking point, or patch an engine coolant leak with nothing but adhesive foam, duct tape, and prayer. Machines respected precision. Aliens respected tradition. Only humans seemed to respect getting the job done by whatever means necessary. And so the Gray Gull drifted from one star to the next, slipping into ports that smelled of fried algae and ionized air, where neon signs and unreadable scripts flashed against glass domes overlooking dead worlds. One station in particular, Ori Van Dock, lingered in his mind long after he'd left. Its central thoroughfare was a hollow cylinder 2 kilometers long, spinning just fast enough for a whisper of gravity. The walls were crowded with stalls and cloth awnings in colors no human eye could find on Earth. Shifting greens, pulsing blues, iridescent gold. He'd stopped to negotiate a fuel contract with a vendor whose translucent skin rippled with internal lights, only to overhear a group of mercenaries speaking in low, clipped tones. Tviri war spreads beyond their borders now, one said. The words filtered through the static rasp of a translation implant. Shard leads them, another replied. Young, cunning, undefeated. The clans fear her more than they fear the enemy. The name meant nothing to Evan then. He paid for his fuel, loaded his cargo, and left Ori Van Dock behind. But the echo of their words followed him. Life on the rim was constant motion. He ran freight through asteroid belts where sunlight was a knife edge, delivered weapons disguised as agricultural equipment, and once ferried a crate that turned out to be full of hibernating carnivorous insects. He learned the hard way that in deep space, trust was a currency even rarer than clean air. But every so often, a job would bring him near the old mining routes, and the memory of that dying station would press against him like a bruise. He'd walk the narrow metal corridors of his ship at night, one hand trailing along the cool wall, wondering, not for the first time, if she had ever found her way out. One jump. 3 years after Ori Van Dock, the Gray Gull passed a derelict freighter drifting near the edge of the Helix Rift. Its hull was scorched, escape pods long gone. The log he recovered from its data core mentioned a Tviri patrol sweeping through the area, led by someone called Shard. The name was starting to show up more often. Rumors spread like plasma fire in oxygen-rich air. She never lost a battle. She had united splintered clans. She was as ruthless as she was loyal to her own. Evan didn't know why it lodged in his thoughts, except that something about the name tasted familiar, like a word half forgotten from a dream. By the time he set course for Cryon Prime, the name was everywhere, broadcast on news feeds, muttered in spacers' bars, carved into propaganda holograms that rippled across the walls of starports. He didn't know yet that fate was quietly plotting an intersection. And he didn't know that the little alien girl from the dying station, who should have vanished into black, had become the Shard. But when he closed his eyes in the dim red light of the gray gull's cockpit, sometimes he still saw those multifaceted eyes staring up at him, and that was enough to make him wonder. Chapter 3. A Stranger at Dock 7. The Cryon Prime Orbital Trade Hub was a living city in the sky, its segmented rings spinning against the backdrop of the pale blue gas giant below. Light spilled from its windows like molten gold, casting the surrounding docking arms in a warm glow. From space, it looked serene. Up close, it was a machine built from noise, motion, and the faint, omnipresent hum of power systems too large to ever shut down. Evan Rourke guided the Grey Gull into Berth 7 with the same steady hands that had flown her through asteroid fields and pirate ambushes. The docking clamps bit down with a dull, metallic thud, and the bay's gravity plating hummed faintly beneath his boots as he stepped onto the gangway. Dock 7 smelled like every major port in the Outer Rim. Fried street food from alien vendors, tang of engine coolant from overworked haulers, and the sharp ozone by plasma welders working somewhere out of sight. Neon signage and a dozen alphabets glowed above the concourse, offering everything from ship repairs to questionable companionship services. Evan kept his head down as he moved through the crowd. Humans weren't common here, and eyes, some curious, some calculating, followed him. He was here for fuel and supplies. Nothing more. Get in, get out. Halfway to the fuel exchange office, movement caught his eye. At the far end of the concourse, a group of Tviri soldiers moved in formation. They were impossible to miss, each one clad in segmented black armor that shimmered faintly like oil on water, helms shaped into angular, insectoid visors. Their movements were too precise, too controlled for station security. This was a military unit. Evan slowed his pace. The locals did too, clearing a path without being told. Even the rowdiest dock workers avoided brushing against the soldiers' armor. The unit advanced like a spear point, their boots making a faint thunk-thunk-thunk on the plated floor. And then, without breaking stride, one of them stepped out of formation. The figure approached him with deliberate calm. The crowd seemed to hold its breath. She was taller than most Tviri he'd seen, her black armor traced with faint, glowing etchings that pulsed like veins of light. Her helm obscured her face, but the way she carried herself, chin high, shoulders squared, spoke of someone used command. Evan instinctively glanced behind him, half expecting to see someone more important in her path. But her visor was locked on him. When she stopped, barely a meter away, she reached up and released the helm seals. A softness of air escaped, and she pulled it free. The years fell away in an instant. Her face was sharper now, the child's soft roundness replaced with the clean, defined lines of adulthood. Her chitin still shimmered violet under the docking bay lights, though the color was deeper now, richer. Her multifaceted eyes, those same dark glass eyes he'd seen on the mining station, caught the glow and fractured into 1,000 pinpoints of reflected light. "You," she said. It wasn't a question. Her voice was low, resonant, carrying the subtle clicking undertones of her native tongue. Evan blinked. "Do I know you?" She studied him for a long, unbroken moment, her gaze sweeping over the worn jacket, the calloused hands, the faint streaks of gray in his hair. "You gave me food," she said simply, "when you had none to spare." It hit him like a blow to the chest. The station, the dying light, the frail girl with the too big thermal wrap. "You survived," he murmured, almost to himself. "I did more than survive." She straightened, her voice taking on a tone that carried just enough for the nearest bystanders to hear. "I command the Shardwing. I am the right hand of the High Council, and I am here to return what is owed." The soldiers behind her shifted subtly, hands resting on their weapons, eyes scanning the crowd. Evan's instinct screamed that this kind of attention could be dangerous. "Look," he said, keeping his voice even, "I'm just here for fuel. You'll have it, and more." Her eyes locked with his, and there was something in them, something fierce, unyielding. "You are under my protection now, human. Wherever I stand, none shall touch you." Before he could reply, she turned on her heel, gesturing for him to follow. The crowd parted again, whispers rippling like a current in her wake. Evan hesitated, his pulse quickening. In all his years drifting through the black, he'd never been claimed by anyone. And yet, in that moment he knew, whatever this was, it had already set his life on a new trajectory. Chapter 4, The Gift of Protection. The Shardwing didn't dock so much as claim its berth. From the moment Evan stepped onto the boarding gantry, the station seemed to hush. The warship loomed in the bay, a living spear of black and silver, its hull formed from overlapping plates that shimmered like insect wings in starlight. Bioluminescent lines pulsed faintly along its length, tracing patterns that seemed almost alive. It was nothing like the boxy human freighters or the sterile battleships he'd seen in dockyards. This was grown, organic. The ship's surface flexed subtly as though breathing. The soldiers flanking him moved in perfect sync, their boots barely making a sound. At their head walked the Tviri commander, the girl from years ago, now armored in authority and purpose. She hadn't offered her name yet, and he hadn't asked. The airlock hissed open, revealing a corridor bathed in soft emerald light. The walls were curved and seamless, warm to the touch, faintly humming with energy. The air smelled faintly of something sweet, floral, but with a sharp undercurrent like ozone after a lightning strike. Evan's boots made a heavier sound on the floor than the soldiers. They moved with the fluid precision of a hive, each turn and step almost choreographed. His own gait felt clumsy by comparison. They arrived at a wide archway. It irised open, petals of living alloy folding back to reveal a chamber unlike anything Evan had seen. It was a personal suite, larger than his entire ship's crew quarters combined. The floor was layered with woven mats of shimmering fiber, and the ceiling was a domed pane of transparent material through which the galaxies stretched in cold brilliance. In the center, a table of black glass was set with an array of dishes, some steaming, some emitting faint vaporous light. "This is for you," she said simply. Evan glanced from the feast to her, eyebrows raised. "I'm a hauler, not a diplomat." Her mandibles shifted in what he guessed might have been the Tviri equivalent of a smirk. "You gave me your last food. Now I offer you my first." Something in the way she said it made the air feel heavier. He sat at the edge of the table, taking in the details. The food was unlike anything he knew. Translucent slices of something that pulsed faintly when disturbed, cubes of golden gel that quivered as if alive, strips of dried black leaf that released a sharp, peppery scent when broken. She gestured for him to eat. "These are chosen to suit human digestion," she said. "I had my medics review your physiology before you boarded." "Efficient," he muttered, picking up a slice of the translucent dish. Her gaze didn't waver. "The Tviri repay debts. We do not forget them. And this," he waved at the room, the guards at the door, "is repayment? It is the beginning." Her tone softened slightly. "When I was a hatchling, you gave me strength to live one more day. That day was the difference between death and rescue. Without it, there would be no commander, no Shardwing, no peace talks. You will not walk the stars unguarded while I draw breath." He leaned back, studying her. "That's a dangerous promise. People want to use it, or you, against me." "They can try," she said, with such certainty it sent a chill down his spine. The hum of the Shardwing's engines deepened, a vibration he felt through the mats beneath his boots. Somewhere outside the viewport, Cryon Prime's docking lights slid past as the ship pulled free of a berth. Evan realized he was now aboard a vessel that moved like a predator through black, under protection of a woman. No, a warrior, who owed him her life. And for the first time in years, the drifting, rootless feeling inside him shifted into something else. Not safety. Not yet. But belonging. Chapter 5. Fire over Ceraxis. The Shardwing tore through folded space like a blade, its living hull shivering with a strain of faster-than-light passage. Evan could feel it, a low vibration that wasn't quite sound, more like the ghost of a pulse running through the ship's bones. He was on the observation deck when the fold shattered. Stars snapped back into place, the swirling tunnel of transit collapsing into a real sky. Below them lay the Ceraxis system, its twin suns casting long, jagged shadows over the ringed world. And just beyond the orbital line, chaos. A coalition fleet was scattered in disarray, their formation shredded. Sleek pirate skiffs darted between lumbering freighters like jackals, unleashing bursts of plasma fire. The airwaves crackled with distress calls and half a dozen alien tongues. Among the chaos, the real danger moved. War machines. Evan's gut tightened at the sight. They weren't ships so much as autonomous predators. AI-controlled combat drones shaped like barbed harpoons, darting in and out of sensor range. The Shardwing's commander, his commander now, if her earlier words were to be believed, stood at the forward station, her silhouette framed against a shifting tactical hologram. Her mandibles clicked once, sharp as steel. All batteries to ready, she ordered in the clipped fury command dialect. The ship responded like a living thing, weapons arrays unfurling from its hull with a hiss of organic plating. Evan braced himself as the first shockwave hit, an impact tremor that made the deck plate shudder under his boots. Somewhere far forward, the Shardwing's void shields caught a direct hit and flared into a ghostly green corona before stabilizing. Pirates are pressing the freighters, one of her lieutenants reported, chitin flashing with stress-pattern ripples. Drones are cutting off their escape vector. Evan didn't know their formations, but he knew ships, and he could already see the flaw. The coalition captains were relying on automated countermeasures, which the AI drones had already learned to exploit. Their weapons were firing in predictable bursts, their power distribution cycling in patterns that could be modeled and ambushed. You can't outgun those drones head-on, Evan said, stepping closer to her command station. They're baiting your firing windows, forcing you into their rhythm. Her multifaceted eyes snapped to his. You have another rhythm to offer, human? Yeah, he said, moving to the nearest systems console, but you're not going to like it. He started by pulling up the Shardwing's engineering subgrid, hands flying over alien controls he barely understood. The interface was fluid and semi-organic, reshaping itself under his touch in response to his intentions. He bypassed half a dozen safeties, redirecting power flow into uneven pulses. The ship shuddered as the energy signature flickered erratically. On sensors, the Shardwing now looked like a damaged predator. Weak, dying, a perfect target. Now they'll come for us, Evan said grimly. They will, she agreed. Her mandibles twitched, not quite a smile, but something close. And we will kill them. The drones took the bait. They swarmed in, banking hard into firing range. The Shardwing's pulse cannons lit the void in jagged bursts, firing not with the precision of an AI, but with the unpredictable timing of a human pilot who'd been in too many losing fights. The first wave of drones didn't adapt fast enough. 3 disintegrated into clouds of molten debris. The others swerved, recalibrating, and ran headlong into the coalition ships, whose captains had suddenly been freed from the AI's predictive stranglehold. The Shardwing plunged into the melee, its living hull twisting through turns no human-built ship could have survived. Evan gripped the edge of the console, feeling the vibration of each impact, the faint, bitter scent of overheated systems bleeding into the air. Through it all, The commander moved like a conductor at the heart of an orchestra, every gesture sending ripples of motion through her crew. When the last drone detonated in a burst of blue light, the deck fell still except for the hum of cooling systems. The coalition ships began hailing their thanks. Evan stayed quiet, stepping back from the console. He wasn't crew. He wasn't even supposed to be here. But when he glanced at her, she was already watching him. "You fought like no Tviri," she said. "I'm not Tviri," he replied, "and that's the point." For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. Then she inclined her head, just slightly. "Under my shadow," she repeated, her voice low and certain. "You will not be wasted." The Shardwing turned toward the next system, its bioluminescent veins pulsing brighter, alive with the heat of battle well fought. Evan could still feel the adrenaline in his blood, the ghost of the fight in his hands. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like just another drifter. Chapter 6, The Weight of a Crown. The Shardwing cruised on silent drive, its organic hull absorbing starlight like the skin of some vast, patient predator. The battle over Ceraxis was behind them, but the tension on board hadn't eased. Evan sat in the captain's ready chamber, a space designed for both war councils and private negotiations. The room was dim, lit by pulsing green and amber veins in the walls, their light shifting like slow heartbeats. A broad viewport arched overhead, giving him a full view of the nebula they were passing, clouds of rose and violet gas lit by the dying flare of a nearby star. The commander stood at the far end, her silhouette sharp against the colors. She was out of her battle armor now, clad in a layered robe of shimmering black fabric that caught the light with every movement. Without the helm, her presence was different, not diminished, but more human, or perhaps just more personal. "You've been avoiding me," she said without turning. Evan shifted in his chair. "I've been keeping out of the way. Your crew doesn't exactly throw welcome parties for strangers. They respect strength," she said. "They do not yet know yours." He huffed. "They saw it in Ceraxis." "That was battle," she replied, finally turned to face him. "Strength is measured in more than the spilling of enemies' lifeblood. It is also in how one carries the weight placed upon them." She crossed the room and sat opposite him, her multifaceted eyes locking on his. Up close, they reflected faint shards of his own face, distorted 100 times over. "There's something I have not told you," she began. "I am not only a commander. I am the sole surviving heir to the Tviri High Council. The war has left my people fractured. Factions seek my death before I can bind the clans to one law again." Evan leaned back, the pieces clicking together in his mind. "So you're royalty. In your words, yes." There was no pride in her tone, only the hard acceptance of fact. "The Shardwing is more than my ship. It is the spear point of my claim. Every move I make is watched by friend and enemy alike, and every weakness will be turned against me." His jaw tightened. "Bringing a human aboard you like this, someone you owe a debt, doesn't exactly scream untouchable." Her mandibles shifted in the faintest hint of a smile. "Unless the debt is one they cannot understand. To them, it is a mystery, and mysteries are dangerous." They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the Shardwing systems filling the air like distant thunder. "Why keep me?" he asked finally. "You could have paid me off with credits, dropped me at the nearest station, and been done with it." Her gaze softened, not in weakness, but in the strange way Tviri eyes could seem less like glass and more like water. "Because the day you gave me your food, you did not see a future commander or an alien asset. You saw someone starving. No calculation, no barter. You simply acted." Evan looked away, suddenly uncomfortable under the weight of her words. "That's just what people do." "No," she said quietly. "It is what humans do. You burn your resources for the sake of another, without knowing if there will be enough left for yourself. The Tviri do not do this. We tally. We measure. We repay. You gave without asking. That is why I cannot dismiss you. The door to the ready chamber opened briefly, one of her officers stepping in and clicking a formal salute. A rapid exchange in the Tviri tongue followed, sharp and efficient. She dismissed him with a flick of her clawed hand, but her mandibles tightened. Another faction counselor has moved against me, she explained. They rally allies for a challenge at the next convergence. If they succeed, the clans will fracture again, and the war will spread to your trade routes. Even your kind will not be safe. Evan exhaled slowly. So you're telling me this isn't just your fight anymore. It hasn't been since the day you shared your ration, she said. Her words landed heavy, but not unwelcome. In that moment, Evan realized the truth. Drifting from job to job, port to port, he'd been trying to avoid being part of anyone's fight. And yet here he was, in the center of one that could change entire star systems. She leaned forward slightly. I will not order you, but I would have you at my side when we reach the convergence. Evan met her gaze and didn't look away. If I stay, I'm not just some debt you're paying off. I pull my weight, on my terms. Her mandibles clicked once, a sound that might have been satisfaction. Then it is decided. Beyond the viewport, the nebula drifted past like a slow-turning storm. Somewhere ahead lay the convergence, and the reckoning it would bring. Chapter 7, Betrayal in the Void. The convergence station hung in the black like a jeweled crown, an immense, rotating habitat where the rival Tviri clans met under a fragile banner truce. Its outer hull glimmered with ceremonial light strips in shifting golds and blues, each pattern a declaration of hospitality and of power. From the Shard Wings docking gantry, Evan could see the vast circular hub at the station's heart. Glass-paneled walkways connected towers filled with meeting chambers and banquet halls. Beneath them, in the station's central well, an artificial jungle spread out, leafy canopies, cascading streams, and the soft shimmer of bioluminescent flora casting alien shadows. The commander, robed in ceremonial black and silver, walked at the head of her retinue, her presence commanding every glance. Evan followed half a step behind, dressed in a simple but finely made tunic she had insisted he wear. He felt the weight of 100 alien eyes on him. Humans were a curiosity here, and he wasn't sure whether their stares carried more curiosity or suspicion. The opening rituals began in the grand assembly spire. The air was thick with the scent of spice resin and the faint musk of so many Tviri in one space. Intricate banners hung from a vaulted ceiling, each one marked with the clan sigil of a faction represented at the convergence. Evan kept the shadows along the edge of the chamber, watching her move through the crowd, graceful, composed, exchanging formal touches of claw and forehead with other leaders. He could see the tightness in her shoulders, the subtle calculation in every motion. She was surrounded by allies, and enemies dressed as allies. It happened without warning. A shiver in the crowd, a faint ripple of movement where there should have been stillness. Evan's instincts, honed from years in ports where a wrong glance could get you stabbed, flared like a warning light. Across the chamber, a tall Tviri male in muted armor shifted his stance. His claw dipped beneath his robe, and the faint glint of concealed plasma pistol caught the assembly ceremonial lighting. Down! Evan shouted, already moving. The first shot tore through the air with a high-pitched shriek, the bolts after him streaking past Commander's shoulder. She spun, mandibles snapping in alarm as her guards reacted a fraction too slow. Evan slammed into her, shoving her sideways. A second bolt scorched the floor where she had been standing. The scent of burnt stone and ozone bit the air. Chaos erupted. The ceremonial calm shattered as guards drew weapons, shouts breaking into overlapping languages. The assassin moved fast, vaulting a railing toward the upper walkways. "Seal the exits," one of the commander's lieutenants barked, but the station security protocols were already compromised. Emergency bulkheads hesitated, doors locking in uneven sequence. Evan didn't think. He ran. The upper walkways were narrow and lined with twisting structural beams. Zero-gravity alarms blared as the assassin triggered a breach in the hull's grav plating. Evan's stomach lurched as his boots left the decking. Inertia carried him forward in a slow, tumbling leap. He caught a handhold and pulled himself along, air rushing past as life support systems tried to stabilize. The assassin glanced back, eyes narrowing at the sight of a human closing the gap. They clashed in midair. Evan wasn't stronger. Tviri physiology made sure of that, but years of hauling cargo and shifting grav fields had taught him how to use momentum like a weapon. He let the assassin ship spin him, then kicked hard off support strut, driving his shoulder into the attacker's midsection. The plasma pistol spun away, drifting toward an open maintenance hatch. The assassin hissed in fury, clawing at Evan's tunic, but the human locked an arm around the alien's weapon hand and wrenched until bone, or whatever passed for it, cracked. Station security finally closed in, seizing the would-be killer in armored grips. When Evan dropped back to the lower level, gravity snapping on again with a bone-jarring pull, the commander was there, flanked by her guards, eyes fixed on him. A smear of scorch-marked dust clung to her robe where he'd shoved her aside. She stepped forward, closing the space between them without hesitation. "You took a shot meant for me," she said, her voice low but carrying an edge that silenced the chaos around them. "Guess we're even now," Evan replied, his breath still ragged. Her mandibles twitched once, too subtle for most to see, but he caught it. Not amusement exactly. Something deeper. "No," she said firmly. "We are not even. You have bound yourself to me before all who matter. They will speak of this. Human, they will see you in my shadow and know it is by your choice." Around them, the whispers had already begun to ripple through the assembled leaders. And in those murmurs, Evan felt the shift, his fate and hers, tangled now in ways neither of them could undo. Chapter 8, Debt Repaid, Bond Forged. The Shardwing glided through deep space, its bioluminescent veins pulsing slow and steady, like the heartbeat of some vast creature finally at rest. The convergent station and its poisonous politics were behind them, though the echoes of what happened there lingered in whispers across the comms. Evan lay in the medbay's recovery cradle, the curved walls around him glowing a soft amber that warmed the air. The bed's organic surface shifted subtly beneath him, reading his vitals, adjusting its texture to ease the stiffness in his muscles. Somewhere overhead, the ship's engines rumbled in that low, reassuring way he'd learned to trust. The door petals parted with a gentle hiss, and she stepped inside. The commander, no, the Shardwing's heart, was out her armor again, clad in a sleeveless robe of deep violet that shimmered like oil when she moved. Her steps were measured, but her gaze never wavered from him. "You're awake," she said. "Been awake for a while," he replied. His voice was still rough, but the smile that tugged at his lips wasn't forced. "Your medics are thorough. They wanted to keep you under until the tissue regrowth finished." She came closer, stopping beside the cradle. "I told them no." Evan tilted his head, curiosity sparking. "Why?" "Because I wanted you to hear this from me while your mind was clear." She reached for the medbay's control panel, and with a soft chime, sealed the room from outside interruptions. The light dimmed, leaving only the soft glow from the walls and the faint blue halo around her eyes. "You have repaid your debt," she said. "More than repaid it. You saved my life before the Grand Assembly. You defended me before all who hold power among my people. There is no greater payment in the Tviri way." Evan shifted, testing the cradle's flexibility beneath him. "So this is goodbye then?" A strange expression passed over her features, something caught between offense and sorrow. No, her voice was steady, but softer now. I am telling you that you are free to go, but I will not let you go. He frowned, unsure if he'd heard right. That's contradictory. It is the truth. She leaned closer, her presence filling his senses, the faint, sharp scent of her armor oil still clinging to her, the subtle heat radiating from her chitin. When you gave me your last food, you acted without thought of return. You did not know what I would become. And yet, your choice has shaped my life more than any battle, any council decree. I will not let the one who gave me my life drift alone in the black again. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't empty. The hum of the engine seemed louder. The soft pulse of the bioluminescent walls a reminder of the ship's living presence. You know, Evan said finally, humans don't usually get this kind of treatment from Tviri royalty. Her mandibles shifted in what he now recognized as a restrained smile. Then perhaps my people will learn something from you. And what's that? That humans do not measure worth in the same way we do. That unpredictability is not weakness. That giving without asking is a kind of power we cannot counter. Evan let out a low chuckle. You make it sound noble. Truth is, I was just a hungry man sharing a bad ration with someone hungrier, which is exactly why it matters. She extended one clawed hand, palm up, a Tviri gesture he'd seen only in moment profound significance. You may walk away now, she said, and I will see you safely to whatever star you wish to claim. Or you may take my hand, and everything that comes with it, my shadow, my enemies, my home. Evan studied her hand, the faint glow of the medbay lights catching along the edges of her chitin. He thought of the mining station's dying red sun, of the frail girl who had stood in the shadow of 1,000 dangers, and of the woman who now stood in his. He reached out and clasped her hand. The bioluminescent veins in the walls brightened, as though the sharding itself recognized a choice. When they stepped out of the medbay together, the crew turned to watch, not with suspicion this time, but with the silent acknowledgement given to someone who had earned their place. Evan felt it in his bones. This wasn't the end of the debt. It was the beginning of something neither of them could walk away from. And somewhere in the vast dark ahead, the galaxy had just become a smaller place, for both of them. The Shardwing drifted in quiet orbit above a jewel of a world. Oceans glinting under 3 moons, cities spilling neon light into the night like molten rivers. In the command chamber, the hum of the engines was steady, a low heartbeat underfoot. Evan stood at the viewport beside her, their reflections framed by alien constellations. Below, the planet was ready to sign the peace accord she had fought to secure. The factions had bent. The war was ending. You've done it, he said, voice low. You've held them together. We've done it, she corrected, her mandibles shifting in that rare, almost smile he'd learned to recognize. For a long moment, they simply watched the stars wheel by. The faint pull of artificial gravity, the muted murmur of alien voices in the corridor, the scent of her armor oil. It was all achingly familiar now. She turned to him, her clawed hand hovering uncertain, before brushing against his. When you gave me your last food, you gave me more than life. You gave me the choice to become this. And now, she placed his hand over the pulse point at her throat. Now I choose you. Evan's throat tightened. Guess we're both terrible at letting go. The Shardwing's engines deepened, and together they watched the planet turn. 2 shadows bound, not by debt, but by the simple, stubborn magic of human kindness that had changed the course of worlds.